Hey everyone, my name is Mike, and I am going to be going ahead and teaching you basic maneuvering in TGC 2019 in the Designer. This is just the way that I do things. There are many different ways to do things. I learned from other people. The parts that I'm showing you are really I learned from the Crazy Canuck videos on YouTube. If you want more details, I would check those out because he does a fantastic job of outlining some of the things that I'm going to show you briefly here. I'm just going to show you some brief things before we get into our course. I don't want us to get into our course and just try some things. I want us to have learned a couple different things before we walk into our course, and then I can show you step by step what I'm doing. What I'm going to do is I am going to make a I'm going to open up a kind of a junk course that I have, so it doesn't matter what I do to it. I'm going to go ahead and click on Designer up here. Let me go to my unpublished courses. And I got to do some cleaning here. I've got a lot of unpublished courses in here. They're actually things that I've published before, or test courses that I've been working on something with. So I'm just going to go into one of my junk courses right here. And it's just opening. It takes just a little bit of time for it to generate all the holes and all the details. It's reading all the LiDAR right now and placing everything. And there we go. When you open up a file, this is kind of what it looks like. Over at the top, you've got the yellow bar, and that tells you why I have the yellow bar is the amount of objects that you can place into the file. And if you take a look, my yellow bar before I even start doing anything is over halfway full. You never want that. You always want it back to like a third or maybe even just a little bit more than a third of the way filled. That way you'll have an adequate amount of room to fit in the objects that you need on the actual course. On this one, I've got all these trees in the background and everything. That's taking up a huge amount of my objects, so I can't do anything with it. So I made a mistake on this file, but I'm going to use it to teach you some different things before we get into our actual file for the course that we're working on. Now you'll notice that over on the right hand side we have a menu that tells us what we can do. There are two different ways to work with this. One is you can plug in a Xbox controller with a USB, and that's one way to do it. Some people do it wirelessly, some people do it with USB. It does work better with USB, I think, than wirelessly. There's some people I've heard that have had glitches. I like the keyboard and mouse the best, and we're going to work with that. So if I take a look at this, being a person who's over 50, I didn't grow up around the same kinds of video games on a PC. We had our Defender and our Atari and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't learn how to maneuver like this. So what I'm in a 3D environment like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just break it down for you just a little bit. Some of you may, if you've played Fortnite or if you've played video games, this is really second nature to you. But if you haven't, this might be new. Okay, so if I take it and I press my right mouse button, I hold it down, I can maneuver from right to left. Slide the mouse right, it rotates right. Slide the mouse left, it rotates left. Okay. Now also, if I still have that right mouse button clicked, I can go, if I slide it back, I go from an above view, and if I slide it forward, it goes more towards the ground view. Now the third thing that I have is my mouse, the mouse scroll. If I scroll it, it zooms in, and if I scroll back, it zooms out. So if I want to go to the first hole, I go ahead, I come around. I can also use my arrows too. I use my arrows right and left. Okay, so I see that the first hole T is right there. I can put my dot on the first hole T, right where I want to go, scroll in, okay? And then if I want to look at it more ground level, I look like this. If I want to look at it more from the sky, I can look like that and look at the whole hole. So again, that's just using clicking on the right mouse button. I can maneuver right and left, down and up, scroll out, scroll in, okay? That will get your basic maneuvering. Let's come over here and let's go on to the this range area. This is a short game range that they have with this course. So I am going to go ahead and show you a couple different things on here. Let's go to the Edit tab. We have 3 different tabs over here. Playtest. That's where you test any holes. And I strongly recommend that you go through at least a minimum of 3 playtests before you publish anything. Even if it's a test course, go through 3 playtests. You will see your flaws very quickly, and you'll be able to correct them. Okay? So playtest, and if I want to play the hole, if I go on a hole and I want to play the hole, I click there. I want to play the course, I can click there, and then you select your T sets here. We'll get into all that later. All right, so let's talk about editing. Now, there's a couple different areas under edit that you can use. The first one is sculpt land. You use that whenever you want to do something with your land to raise it or lower it or flatten it. Then you have create add. Create add you use to add any trees, bushes, grasses, water, anything like that. And then lastly, you have measure. If you want to take and put something at a specific yardage, you can go ahead and use the measure category. I use measure a ton when I create my own ranges. If you don't already know, you can create ranges in TGC, and then you just put it on auto rewind, and you could just do your own range. There's some really good ones. MT Hunt has dead flat range. That's a fantastic one. That's probably the best regular range out there. I have one that I use all the time called Hilltop Range, which is basically the greens on a hilltop, and if you don't hit the green, it trickles down into a valley. So there's lots of different ranges that you can use out there, and I use the measure tool to get exact measurements to create ranges a lot, but I don't use it too much on courses. All right, so let's take a look at the first thing, sculpt land. Okay, you got landscape flatten and landscape raise. I tend to use landscape flatten all the time, no matter what I'm doing. So, and a lot of people do. Very few people use landscape raise. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. I use landscape raise, not landscape flatten. I will use flatten for tee boxes, but other than that, I don't. All right, so now I clicked, and now I've got these brushes. You can use splines or brushes with TGC, not so much with the raise, but with other things. I don't like to use splines in 2019. They're great in OSM. I don't like them here. They aren't accurate enough, and they get a little wonky at sometimes, and they're hard to use. So you click it, and it shows you all these brushes. Now, even though I've got the round brush out, it's not selected yet. I got to click it one more time. And I use the round brush a lot. Now I've got it. Now it's selected. And if I use my scroll right there, it will scroll me in, out. All right, now let's do some maneuvering with it. If I press Shift and I use the scroll button, I can raise land right there. And if I reverse the scroll button, I can dig a hole right there. Okay, the hole is not dug until I click the mouse. Once I click the mouse, now the hole is dug. Okay, it takes just a second for it to generate. If you make a mistake, you can always hit U, and that will undo your last move. And it takes just a second. It's taking a little longer because my bar is filled. All right. Now I could do some different things with maneuvering here. If I hit my control key, I can scroll and make it bigger, or scroll and make it smaller. If I hit my Alt key, you can't really see it here in this one, but let's go to a different brush. It's a different shape, not round. This is one I use all the time on edges of lakes. But if I hit the Alt key, whoops, I gotta select it. If I hit the Alt key, now I can rotate it with my scroll. So again, I'm using that scroll on my mouse. If I go ahead, you'll see up there it says Q Advanced Edit. So if I press Q, I go into a different editing scale, and you'll notice over on my right things changed. So if I press Alt, now you notice how it makes it longer. And again, I'm using that mouse scroll. But if I press Control, see how it makes it wider. Okay. And Shift again, lowers and raises. So let's say I am going to create a lake here. Now your lakes are already pre-dug because we did that in TGC. You don't want to ever, this is too deep. See how those jagged edges there? Dig it too deep, you need the jagged edges. Really, if you dig a lake like 7 feet, that's usually plenty fine for a golf club. Okay, so now I dug a little trench there. Escape out of that. So I've got this little trench dug here, and now I am going to go put water inside that trench. So I'm going to go backwards. I hit Escape, Create Add. Okay, so now I'm going to place an object. I'm going to create water right there. I hit Water Body. Now again, I use my tools to make this bigger, and I'm going to rotate it so that it's sitting square. You don't want it too much bigger than your hole, because if it is, you might catch a low spot where the water will collect. Okay. Now, it says here for water to raise, you want Shift Page Up. Now this is a fluke. Some computers do that. A lot of computers do it, most do. On mine, for some reason, I have to press Control, FN, and page down, and then my water goes up. I don't know why. I have no clue. Now you'll see how my water, it's kind of floating there. So my water level is way too high. If I put it there, it's just a giant floating body of water. I don't want it there. I want it at ground level. So I got to get it down here. I got to look at it and see those blue edges. Watch how the blue edge is going to disappear. And I don't want any water outside of my shape. All right. So now I've got water right there. I click. And there you go. Right there, I just created a lake. All right. You can see nice clean edges. I need to contour and fix this up right here a little bit, but other than that, looking pretty decent. There's some other issues with the land here, but we'd fix that up. Okay, so I've got my lake. Let's go ahead and delete this. Okay. Now, let's say I had forgotten a sand trap. I am going to go ahead and, in that case, I would create a surface. I would go to Bunker, and I'm not going to use Spline, I'm going to use Brush. And you can combine brushes together to create some really good features. Let's go ahead and let's do this actually. All right, so I select it. Now I've got the one thing up there, the shape that I'm using. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to rotate it. I made it bigger by hitting Control and using the scroll wheel. Now I'm going to rotate it. Let's say I'm going to fit it right in here. And then I'm going to use my Q to kind of get it to fit right. Get it as close as I can. All right, so let's just say that that's our bunker, what it's going to look like. Or at least part of it. So now it generated a bunker. So let's escape from that. Now let's say I'm going to add feet. Let's say this isn't going to look great, but if I say, okay, my bunker is more like these two shapes combined. If I click on there, see how it just combined them? And if I say, oh, I don't want that little hump in there, I want that to look more like. Okay, so that's an oddly shaped bunker, but you get the idea. You can take and just combine shapes together just to get what you need in order to make things look the way that you'd like them to make them to look. So you're really only using this in a LiDAR course if you forgot to put in a bunker. Other than that, your bunker should be in place. And like if I were to take a look at this jump course that I made, you see over here there's a bunker in place, bunkers right here and there. They're already there, so that's not an issue most of the time. It's just if you forgot. All right, so let's take a look at anything else. Placement of trees. Let's talk about trees real quick. Nature, trees. Okay. I'm going to click on elm. Now, if I want to place one tree, okay, let's say I want to place a tree right in there in this like kind of wave spot. All I do is click on it. Click on the spot, then it places my tree right there. But let's see. Most trees, you can do a grove of trees. So if I go to Z multi-object, and let's hope that this one does it. Now I press Control and I've got my scroll bar, and see how it's just doing a lot of, it went from one tree to many trees. This is great for doing boundaries. So if I went here, and I've got, say I got a forestry area, and a lot of the times they don't make the forest areas, even though you do map forest, they don't make them thick enough. So I can just go area after area. And when you do something like this, you want to go look at ground level and say, okay, does that look like a forestry boundary? Okay. So that is trees right there. There's a lot of different trees you can choose from. Again, you can multi-plant. All right. Next thing. Let's take a look at grasses real quick. I get this a lot. In Illinois, we have tons of grassy areas. And oftentimes you got to figure out what to do with them. This one right here is my favorite one to use. If I zoom in, you'll see it's like one tuft. But if I'm doing a huge grassy area, I can plant one at a time. That's really hard. So I use my multi-object over there, the Z. And now I go ahead and I can plant. And I usually overlap. Now, whenever I do tall grasses, I want to do a color with it. So then I go ahead and I like reds and yellows because you can see them. And now notice how the red little flowers there? You can see them from a higher altitude. Okay, and that helps when your ball's flying through the air. And just go ahead and I just add some color to the tall grasses. Now the course we're looking at has all the tall grasses have a yellow hue to it. So the course we're working on, we're going to use yellows more than red. So if I hit my escape, and I get out of this, and I zoom in here, now I've got these nice tall grasses with red touches to it. It makes it stand out a lot really well in TGC. Now I'm working with a smaller graphics processor, graphics card. I only have a 1050, so notice how they disappear when I get further away. They're still there, and if I had a better graphics card, it would show them even if I was this far away. But that's just part of the issue of having a smaller graphics card. Okay, so let's escape out of this. All right, the last thing here, I think that actually is everything I wanted to show you on this step before we get into our regular course. In our regular course, we will go ahead and talk about everything else through experience, through whether it's tee sets or creating grasses around lakes or anything like that. I just wanted to do some things on a course that was kind of just a junk course of mine, so that I could do some things and not risk messing up the actual course itself. Okay, so I hope that you all had a good time learning a little bit about TGC. We will move on from here into actually looking at the course and what we can do with it. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.